I'll give you $50,000 to pretend to be my girlfriend for one weekend. Natalie Brown looked up from her laptop, her fingers frozen mid-type. Her boss, Jayden Lee, stood in front of her desk like he'd just asked her to grab him coffee instead of commit romantic fraud. "I'm sorry," she said slowly, pulling out one earbud. "I thought I just heard you offer me money to be your fake girlfriend. But that can't be right, because you're a 30-year-old CEO, not a desperate teenager going to prom." His jaw tightened. "My grandmother is flying in from Seoul. She's been threatening to arrange my marriage if I don't bring someone home. My mother has already interviewed 6 candidates." Natalie snorted. "And you chose me because—" He opened his mouth and then stopped, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Natalie, please, I'm begging you." She leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Jayden Lee doesn't beg. He does now." Welcome back to the channel, besties. If you're new here, you've just found your new addiction. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss a story. Drop a comment telling me, would you take $50,000 to fake date your boss? Let's get into this satisfying story. 24 hours earlier, Natalie's biggest problem had been the vending machine eating her dollar bill. She'd been working as Jayden Lee's executive assistant for 11 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days, and in that time, she'd learned several important things about her boss. 1. He was allergic to expressing emotions that weren't mildly irritated or professionally neutral. 2. Despite running a tech empire worth billions, he couldn't figure out how to use the coffee machine in the break room. 3. He had the most annoyingly perfect face she'd ever seen in her 26 years of existence, and she'd learned to ignore it the same way she ignored her student loan statements, by pretending it didn't exist. Their professional relationship worked precisely because she treated him like a slightly malfunctioning appliance, rather than the most eligible bachelor in Los Angeles. "You have a 2 p.m. with the marketing team," she'd told him that morning, not looking up from her tablet. "A 3:30 with the investors from Tokyo, and your mother called 6 times. I told her you were in surgery. I'm not a doctor. She doesn't know that. I also told her you'd recently found Jesus and taken a vow of celibacy, which should buy you at least 3 weeks." Jayden had stared at her for a long moment. "You told my mother I joined a monastery?" "I told her you were considering a monastery. I left room for negotiation." Natalie had finally looked up, meeting his dark eyes without flinching. "Also, the quarterly reports are on your desk, color-coded by urgency. Red means deal with it now, yellow means deal with it today, and green means this can wait, but you'll forget if I don't include it." "What about the blue ones?" "Those are just for fun. I like to keep you guessing." He'd almost smiled. Almost. She'd seen the corner of his mouth twitch before he caught himself and retreated to his office like emotions were contagious. That was their dynamic. Professional, efficient, and completely devoid of any romantic tension whatsoever. Or so she'd thought. The fake girlfriend proposal came at 4:47 p.m., right when Natalie was mentally planning her evening. Takeout, true crime documentary, aggressive ignoring of her mother's texts about putting herself out there. Jayden had walked out of his office with the look of a man who'd just received terrible news. Not company is failing, terrible, she would have known about that, but more personal crisis that requires human interaction, terrible. "Miss Brown," he'd said, which was weird because he usually just called her Natalie. "I need to speak with you, privately. If this is about the monastery thing, I can call your mother back." "It's not about the monastery thing." He'd gestured toward his office, and she'd followed, curiosity overriding her usual commitment to leaving at exactly 5 p.m. That's when he'd made his proposition. $50,000. One weekend. Pretend to be madly in love with a man who scheduled bathroom breaks into his calendar. "Let me get this straight," Natalie said, swiveling her chair to face him fully. "You want me to meet your entire family, lie to their faces, and convince a Korean grandmother that we're in a committed relationship?" "Yes." "Does this Korean grandmother happen to have a lie detector for a face? Because in my experience, grandmothers can smell deception like bloodhounds smell fear." Jayden's expression flickered, My grandmother is perceptive. So that's a yes. She's also 83 years old and keeps saying she wants to see her handsome grandson happy before she dies. He said happy like it was a word in a foreign language he'd only recently learned. She's been saying this for 15 years, but apparently this time she means it because she's flying in from Seoul and bringing... He paused, closing his eyes. She's bringing the book. Natalie raised an eyebrow. The book? It's a photo album of prospective brides. She's been compiling it since I was 12. It has tabs, Natalie. Laminated tabs. There's a section organized by blood type. Blood type? For compatibility purposes. Natalie pressed her lips together to keep from laughing. And your only escape from the blood type organized bride album is to pretend you're already in a relationship. Yes. With me specifically. You're the obvious choice. I'm your assistant. Which means you already know my schedule, my preferences, and my family history. You won't be caught off guard by questions about my life, because you literally manage my life. I manage your calendar. There's a difference. Jayden moved closer, and Natalie caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and subtle that she absolutely did not notice on a daily basis, because that would be inappropriate. My family arrives Friday evening, he said, his voice dropping. They'll be staying at my parents' estate in Malibu for the weekend. All I need is for you to attend dinner Friday night, brunch Saturday, and a small gathering Sunday afternoon. Smile, hold my hand, pretend you find me charming. That's going to be the hardest part. And by Monday morning, we'll announce a mutual breakup, and you'll be $50,000 richer. Natalie studied his face, searching for the catch. There was always a catch. Why can't you just tell your family you're not ready for a relationship? Because I've been telling them that for 12 years and they've stopped believing me. Have you considered actually dating someone? Something shuttered behind his eyes. That's not an option. She wanted to ask why, but the way his jaw tightened told her this wasn't a door he was willing to open. Fine, his emotional constipation wasn't her business. 50,000, she repeated. 50,000. And this stays strictly professional. No weird expectations, no method acting that crosses lines. Absolutely not. You're my assistant, and I respect you too much to. He stopped abruptly, like he'd accidentally revealed something he hadn't meant to. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. Natalie leaned back, weighing her options. $50,000 was a lot of money, enough to pay off her credit cards, take that vacation to Thailand she'd been dreaming about, and still have enough left over for a new couch that didn't have mysterious stains from the previous owner. Plus, there was something deliciously chaotic about the idea of lying to a billionaire family for an entire weekend. I have conditions, she said. Jayden nodded immediately. Name them. 1. I get to wear whatever I want. I'm not putting on some uncomfortable designer outfit that makes me look like I'm trying too hard. Done. 2. You have to actually be nice to me during this weekend. No professional distance. No treating me like your assistant. If we're selling this, you need to act like a human being with feelings. His eye twitched. Fine. 3. If your grandmother offers me food, I'm eating it. I don't care if it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, or a midnight snack. I'm not turning down home cooking to maintain some kind of image. My grandmother will love that, actually. And 4, Natalie stood up, meeting his eyes directly. If at any point this gets weird, I'm out. No questions asked. You can tell your family whatever you want, but I walk away clean. Jayden held out his hand. Deal. She shook it, trying to ignore how warm his palm was, how long his fingers were, how this was definitely just a business transaction and not the beginning of a romantic comedy she'd accidentally wandered into. One more thing, she said, still holding his hand. What? The monastery story I told your mother? You might want to let her down gently about that. For the first time in 11 months, Jayden Lee actually laughed. It transformed his entire face, crinkled his eyes, softened his jaw, made him look like an actual person instead of a very attractive robot. Natalie decided right then that she was in trouble. Friday evening arrived with the inevitability of a train wreck, and Natalie spent approximately 4 hours staring at her closet before deciding that nothing she owned was appropriate for lying to billionaires in Malibu. She finally settled on a fitted burnt orange dress that hugged her curves without being inappropriate, paired with gold earrings and her favorite nude heels. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek, low bun, professional enough to look intentional, relaxed enough to seem effortless. She looked good. She looked like someone Jayden Lee might actually date. She looked absolutely terrified. "It's one weekend," she told her reflection. 3 days. Smile, nod, collect your check, move on with your life. Her reflection did not seem convinced. Jayden picked her up at 6 in a black Tesla that smelled like leather and anxiety. He was wearing a casual blazer over a white shirt, his dark hair stylishly tousled in a way that probably took 20 minutes but was supposed to look effortless. "You look nice," he said as she slid into the passenger seat. "I look like I'm about to commit fraud, which I am, so I guess it's appropriate." "You're not committing fraud, you're performing a social service. Is that what we're calling it?" "It's what I'm paying you $50,000 to call it." Natalie snorted, leaning back in the leather seat. "So what do I need to know about your family, besides the Blood Type Bride album?" Jayden's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "My parents are traditional. My father built the company from the ground up before I took over, so he can be intimidating. My mother is warmer but extremely perceptive. She'll notice if anything seems off. My younger sister is 25 and currently exists to make my life difficult. Sounds like a normal sibling relationship. She once posted my baby photos on Twitter to tank a business deal because I forgot her birthday. Did it work? The deal went through, but I lost 300,000 followers." Natalie laughed despite herself. "I think I'm going to like your sister. Please don't team up against me. I'm paying you to be on my side. You're paying me to be your fake girlfriend. I didn't sign anything about loyalty." Jayden shot her a look that was almost amused. Almost. They drove in silence for a few minutes before Natalie asked the question that had been bothering her. "Why don't you want to get married?" His jaw tightened. "That's personal. I'm about to lie to your grandmother about being in love with you. I think we're past professional boundaries." For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then quietly, "I was engaged once, 3 years ago." Natalie blinked. In 11 months of managing his life, she'd never heard anything about an engagement. What happened? "She decided she was more interested in my business partner than in me." His voice was flat, controlled. "They're married now, have a kid. I get a Christmas card every year." That's sociopathic. The Christmas card? All of it. Who sends a Christmas card to the person they cheated on? Someone who wants to remind me that she won, apparently. Natalie turned to look at him fully, studying the sharp line of his profile, the way his grip on the steering wheel had gone white-knuckled. "You know that's not true, right?" she said. "That she didn't win anything." "I'm aware. You built a billion-dollar company. You have your own Wikipedia page. You're so successful that your grandmother has to fly in from Seoul to force you to date. That's impressive, not pitiful." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or something warmer. "You have a strange way of giving compliments." "It's a gift." The estate appeared ahead of them, a sprawling mansion perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, all glass walls and modern architecture, and money so old it probably had its own social security number. "Last chance to back out," Jayden said as they pulled into the circular driveway. Natalie took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and smiled her most convincing smile. "Let's go lie to your family." The front door opened before they even reached it, revealing a woman who was either Jayden's mother or a very well-preserved older sister. She was elegant in a soft pink cashmere sweater and silk pants, her dark hair swept up in a sophisticated twist, her face showing the kind of aging that happened when you had access to the best dermatologists money could buy. "You brought someone," she said, her eyes immediately landing on Natalie with laser focus. "You actually brought someone. Mum, this is a real human woman." Mrs. Lee clasped her hands together like she'd just witnessed a miracle. Richard, come look. Your son is capable of human connection. A man appeared behind her, tall, silver-haired, with the stern bearing of someone who'd spent decades intimidating business rivals. I'll believe it when I see a ring, he said, but his eyes were already assessing Natalie with keen interest. It's wonderful to meet you both, Natalie said, extending her hand. I'm Natalie Brown. I've heard so much about you. All good things, I hope, Mrs. Lee said, taking Natalie's hand and then pulling her into an unexpected hug. Oh, you're beautiful. Jayden, why didn't you tell us she was beautiful? I don't typically describe my girlfriend's appearance to my parents. She's stunning, Mrs. Lee continued, ignoring him completely. She held Natalie at arm's length, examining her like a prized painting. Look at this skin, and those cheekbones. Do you moisturize? You must moisturize. What's your routine? I drink water sometimes. She's humble too. Mrs. Lee turned to her husband with triumph in her eyes. Humble and beautiful. Where did you find her? She's my executive assistant, Jayden said. Silence. Mrs. Lee's expression shifted from delighted to calculating in approximately half a second. Your assistant, she repeated slowly. Yes. So you've been hiding this woman from us for… How long has she worked for you? Almost a year. A year? A new voice joined the chaos, younger, amused, and dripping with sibling satisfaction. Oh, this is perfect. A young woman descended the grand staircase like she was making an entrance in a musical. She had Jayden's sharp features but her mother's warmth, and she was dressed in ripped jeans and a band t-shirt that seemed specifically chosen to irritate her parents. You, she said, pointing at Natalie, are going to tell me everything. Every embarrassing story, every office disaster, every time my brother made an idiot of himself. Mina, Jayden started, I'll pay you double whatever he's paying you for this little performance. Natalie's blood went cold. Performance? Mina raised an eyebrow. Please, I've known my brother for 25 years. He doesn't date. He definitely doesn't bring women home. This has desperate scheme to avoid Grandma's marriage campaign, written all over it. Mina, Mrs. Lee looked horrified. You can't just accuse your brother of… It's okay, Mrs. Lee. Natalie stepped forward, linking her arm through Jayden's and leaning into his side. I understand why Mina might be suspicious. Your son isn't exactly known for his emotional availability. Jayden stiffened beside her. The first 3 months I worked for him, I thought he might be a very advanced AI, Natalie continued, warning to her audience. He didn't make small talk. He didn't smile. He communicated exclusively through post-it notes and color-coded spreadsheets, Mount quote. Mina's suspicious expression was slowly shifting to interested. But then one day, I found him in the break room at 2 a.m., eating cold pizza and watching videos of baby elephants on his phone. That's not, Jayden tried. He was crying. Natalie patted his arm, silent tears. Very dignified, but still tears. And I thought, okay, there's a human being in there somewhere. Mr. Lee made a strangled sound that might have been a laugh. So no, Natalie finished. This isn't a performance. Your son is genuinely capable of romantic feelings. He just spent 30 years convincing everyone otherwise because he has the emotional intelligence of a very smart refrigerator. Dead silence. Then Mina burst out laughing. Real, genuine laughter that transformed her face from suspicious to delighted. Oh my God, she wheezed. I love her. She stays. She's family now. Mum, can we keep her? I do like you very much, Mrs. Lee said, her calculating look replaced by something almost like approval. Anyone who can roast my son that effectively, while defending him at the same time, is exactly the kind of woman he needs. Natalie felt Jayden's hand slip into hers, warm, steady, probably just for show, and squeezed back. Should we go inside? He asked, his voice slightly strangled. Not yet. Mr. Lee stepped forward, studying Natalie with the intensity of someone evaluating a potential merger. Miss Brown, what are your intentions with my son? Richard, Mrs. Lee started. It's a simple question. Natalie met his gaze without flinching. My intentions are to make your son remember that he's a person, not just a CEO, to make sure he eats lunch when he's working through the day and sleeps at night instead of living on Red Bull and spreadsheets, and, occasionally, to remind him that the world won't end if he takes a vacation. Mr. Lee's expression didn't change. And if the relationship ends, then I'll wish him well and hope he finds someone who makes him happy. Natalie tilted her head. But I don't plan on going anywhere, Mr. Lee. Your son is difficult, workaholic, and allergic to expressing positive emotions. But underneath all of that, he's a good man. I happen to think that's worth sticking around for. The silence stretched. Then Mr. Lee nodded once, turned, and walked back into the house. That means he likes you, Mina whispered loudly. He once made a girlfriend cry in the first 5 minutes. You're already doing better than most. Jayden's hand tightened around Natalie's. Thank you, he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. Don't thank me yet, she murmured back. I haven't met your grandmother. The Lee family estate was exactly as overwhelming on the inside as it was on the outside. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Pacific, flooding the modern interior with golden evening light. The furniture was all clean lines and expensive stuff, but it was the family photos that caught Natalie's attention. They lined a hallway leading to the main living area, dozens of frames showing the Lee family through the years. Jayden as a gap-toothed child, Mina as a chubby baby, Mr. and Mrs. Lee looking young and in love at what appeared to be their wedding. Reconnaissance? Jayden asked, appearing at her elbow. Research. There's a difference. Is there? Reconnaissance implies I'm spying. Research implies I'm being thorough. She pointed at a photo of teenage Jayden in a soccer uniform. Were you any good? Regional champions 3 years in a row. Of course you were. She moved to the next photo, Jayden in a graduation cap, looking uncomfortable with his family crowded around him. You smile like someone's forcing you at gunpoint. That's because someone was. My mother threatened to take away my car if I didn't look happy. Harsh. She wanted the perfect family photo. I wanted to go to my apartment and play video games. We compromised. I smiled for 30 seconds and then pretended to have food poisoning. Natalie laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet hallway. You know, she said, studying his face in the dim light, you're a lot funnier than you let people see. I have a reputation to maintain. As what? A robot? As a serious businessman, serious businessmen can tell jokes. Not in my experience. She turned to face him fully, close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, close enough to catch that subtle cologne again. Why do you hide? She asked quietly. The real you, I mean. The one who cries at puppy commercials and eats cold pizza at 2 a.m. His expression flickered, something vulnerable, quickly controlled. Because the real me isn't what people expect from a CEO. He paused. And the last person I showed that to decided it wasn't enough. The ex-fiancé, the one who'd chosen his business partner. Natalie felt an unexpected surge of anger at a woman she'd never met. She was wrong, she said firmly. Anyone who can't appreciate a man who cries at baby elephants doesn't deserve that man. Jayden stared at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then, from somewhere deeper in the house, a voice called out in Korean. That's my grandmother, Jayden said, the vulnerability vanishing behind his professional mask. Are you ready? No, Natalie admitted, but let's do this anyway. Grandmother Lee was tiny. That was Natalie's first thought, that this terrifying matriarch, who'd been compiling a bride album for 18 years, was barely 5 feet tall and looked like a stiff breeze might knock her over. But then Grandmother Lee looked at her, and Natalie understood why Jayden was so afraid. Those dark eyes missed nothing. They catalogued Natalie's dress, her posture, her hair, the way she stood next to Jayden, the exact distance between their bodies. They analyzed and assessed and calculated, all in approximately 3 seconds. So, Grandmother Lee said, her English accented but precise, this is the woman who made my grandson smile. I try, ma'am. Grandmother, the old woman corrected. If you are dating my Jayden, you call me grandmother. Grandmother, Natalie repeated, testing the word. It's an honor to meet you. Grandmother Lee circled her slowly, examining her from all angles, like she was a show horse up for auction. Good posture, strong shoulders, nice hips. Grandmother, Jayden started, mortified. Quiet, Jayden. I am assessing. She stopped in front of Natalie, looking up at her with sharp eyes. You are beautiful. Smart, I think. You work for my grandson, so you must be patient. Are you patient? When I need to be. And when you don't need to be. Natalie smiled. Then I'm very efficient at getting what I want. Grandmother Lee's face cracked into a smile. The first genuine smile Natalie had seen. I like this one, she announced to the room at large. She has fire. I told you, Mrs. Lee said smugly. You told me nothing. You said she was nice. She is not nice. She is fierce. Grandmother Lee patted Natalie's arm. Fierce is better. Fierce will keep my grandson in line. I do my best, grandmother. Now. The old woman's eyes sharpened again. Tell me how you met. This was it. The first real test. Natalie and Jayden had prepared for this on the drive over, crafting a story that was close enough to the truth, to be believable, but romantic enough to satisfy a grandmother's expectations. But before Jayden could launch into their rehearsed version, Natalie spoke. Your grandson made me cry, she said. Everyone in the room froze. Jayden looked at her with barely concealed horror. Mina looked delighted. Mrs. Lee looked concerned. Mr. Lee looked curious. And Grandmother Lee raised one elegant eyebrow. Continue. It was my third day on the job, Natalie said, leaning into the story she hadn't planned on telling. I'd just moved to Los Angeles. I didn't know anyone, and I'd somehow managed to delete an entire presentation that was supposed to be delivered in 2 hours. This part was true. She remembered that day vividly. The panic, the desperation, the certainty that she was about to be fired. I was sitting at my desk, trying not to cry, when your grandson walked out of his office. He looked at me, really looked, not just glanced, and said, the presentation is backed up on the server. I save everything twice because my assistant before you once deleted an entire quarter's worth of reports. Also true. Jayden had said exactly that. And then, Natalie continued, he handed me a tissue and said, if you're going to cry, do it in my office. The break room has a glass wall and your mascara is running. Mina snorted. It was the least romantic thing anyone had ever said to me, Natalie said, but it was also kind. In his own weird, emotionally stunted way. He could have fired me. He could have yelled. Instead, he handed me a tissue and pointed me toward privacy. Jayden was staring at her, like he'd never seen her before. That's when I started to see him, Natalie finished. Not the CEO, not the reputation, just him. Silence. Then Grandmother Lee nodded slowly, satisfaction settling into her features. That is my grandson, she said. Cold on the outside, warm bread on the inside. Grandmother. You are warm bread, Jayden. Accept it. She turned to Natalie. You will sit next to me at dinner. I have questions. I look forward to it, grandmother. The old woman smiled again, then shuffled toward the dining room, leaving chaos in her wake. Warm bread, Mina whispered gleefully. I'm putting that on a t-shirt. Mina, I swear. Too late. It's already designed in my head. Jayden Lee, cold outside, warm bread inside. It's going to be my Christmas present to you. I will cut you out of my will. You love me too much. Jayden turned to Natalie, his expression complicated. The story you told was true, she said quietly. Mostly. I just left out the part where you made me cry, because you're kind of terrifying, and I was sure you hated me. I never hated you. I know that now. She smiled. You're warm bread, remember? Something shifted in his eyes. Something that looked almost like affection. Natalie. Come on, warm bread. She linked her arm through his, ignoring the way her heart was beating too fast. Your grandmother has questions, and I have a feeling she's not the patient type. Dinner was an elaborate affair, 12 courses of Korean food that made Natalie's stomach growl, embarrassingly, with each new dish presented. True to her word, Grandmother Lee had claimed Natalie for the seat beside her, peppering her with questions between bites of kimchi and perfectly grilled meat. What does your family do? They're based on the East Coast. I moved to California for a change of scenery. And they approved of this? A young woman, alone, in a new city. They trust me to make my own decisions. Grandmother Lee nodded, apparently satisfied with this non-answer. Natalie had noticed that the family hadn't asked about her background, her education, or any of the typical interrogation questions. Either they were being polite, or Jayden had warned them off. She suspected the latter. Do you want children? Natalie nearly choked on her water. Eventually maybe. I haven't really. Jayden wants 3. Jayden started. 3, Grandmother Lee repeated firmly. You told me when you were 8. 3 children, a dog, and a house with a big yard. I remember everything, Jayden. Everything. I was 8. And now you're 30, with no children, no dog, and an apartment that probably looks like a hotel room. She turned back to Natalie. Tell me you'll give him a dog at least. I think we should probably take things one step at a time. Nonsense. It's been almost a year. When do you move in together? The table went quiet. Natalie felt Jayden tense beside her. They hadn't prepared for this question. They hadn't prepared for anything beyond, how did you meet? And what do you like about each other? We've discussed it, Natalie said carefully. But we're both career-focused right now, and I don't want to rush something just because it seems like the right timeline. Every relationship moves at its own pace. Grandmother Lee studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled. Good answer. You don't let me bully you. I appreciate that. You weren't bullying me, Grandmother. You were testing me. Same thing. I'm old. I have limited time. Mother, Mrs. Lee said. I'm 83, Margaret. I could die any day. You've been saying that since you were 60. And one day I'll be right. Grandmother Lee turned back to Natalie with a conspiratorial wink. The secret is to make them think you're fragile. They're nicer that way. Natalie laughed despite herself. That's manipulative. It's strategic. There's a difference. By the time dessert was served, a delicate Korean rice cake that melted on Natalie's tongue, she'd fielded approximately 30 questions, ranging from her favorite color, sky blue, to her opinion on traditional versus modern marriage ceremonies. She preferred modern but could appreciate the cultural significance of traditional. To whether she could cook Korean food, she could not, but expressed a sincere willingness to learn, which seemed to please everyone. Through it all, Jayden had been a steady presence beside her, refilling her water glass, quietly warning her about dishes that were spicier than they looked, occasionally resting his hand on her arm in casual displays of affection that felt increasingly less casual. At one point, Mrs. Lee started telling a story about Jayden's childhood piano recital, and he'd groaned so dramatically that Natalie had to bite her lip to keep from laughing. He was supposed to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, Mrs. Lee said, eyes bright with remembered embarrassment. But he'd taught himself a different song. Mum, please. He played the Imperial March from Star Wars at a children's recital for a room full of parents expecting nursery rhymes. It was musically complex. He was 7. Natalie turned to look at him, delighted. You played Darth Vader's theme at a piano recital? I was making a statement. What statement? That the assigned material was beneath me. You were 7. I was a very confident 7-year-old. Mina leaned forward, grinning. Tell her about the science fair. Absolutely not. He built a working volcano, Mina continued, ignoring him. But instead of normal baking soda explosion, he somehow engineered it to shoot glitter. Everywhere. The entire gymnasium was covered in glitter for weeks. That was an unintended side effect. 20 kids had to go home and change clothes. In my defense, the instructions I found online were unclear about the chemical reaction. You were 9. I was a very experimental 9-year-old. Natalie was laughing so hard her stomach hurt. This was not the Jayden Lee she'd worked for almost a year. This was someone softer, funnier, more human than she'd ever seen. And he was looking at her like she'd hung the moon. What? she asked, catching his gaze. Nothing, but he was smiling, really smiling, the kind that reached his eyes and crinkled their corners. You have a nice laugh. I have a nice. She stopped, suddenly aware that his family was watching them, with identical expressions of satisfied amusement. Thank you. You're welcome. Grandmother Lee leaned over and whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "This one you keep. I approve." The house was quiet when Natalie emerged from her guest room at midnight, unable to sleep. The bed was too soft, the room too dark, her brain too full of the evening's events. She kept replaying moments, Jayden's hand on her arm, the way he'd laughed at her jokes, the look in his eyes when she'd defended him to his sister. This was fake. She knew it was fake. She'd signed up for fake. So why did everything feel so terrifyingly real? She found the kitchen without too much trouble. Glass of water seemed like a reasonable excuse for wandering around a mansion at midnight, and nearly jumped out of her skin when she saw Jayden already there. He was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against the moonlit ocean, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt that somehow made him look more attractive than any of his expensive suits. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked without turning around. "The mattress is too comfortable. It's suspicious. My mother special orders them. She believes good sleep is the foundation of family harmony. Is that why your family is so well adjusted?" He laughed softly. "We're not well adjusted. We're just good at hiding it." Natalie moved to stand beside him, looking out at the dark water stretching toward the horizon. "Your family is nice," she said. "I wasn't expecting that. Were you expecting monsters?" "I was expecting, I don't know, rich people being terrible, making me feel like an outsider. But they've been welcoming, warm. They like you." He paused. "Grandmother especially. She's never approved of anyone I've brought home before." "How many people have you brought home?" "Just one, the one who left." The ex-fiancée again. She seemed to hover in the background of every conversation, a ghost that wouldn't quite disappear. "I'm sorry," Natalie said quietly, "about what happened with her. It wasn't fair. Life isn't fair. I learned that lesson. And you decided to never let anyone get close again." He turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the darkness. "Is that what you think? That I'm closed off because I'm scared? Aren't you?" The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. "Maybe," he finally admitted, "or maybe I just hadn't met someone worth opening up for." Natalie's breath caught. "That's a line." "It's not a line. It's the truth." He stepped closer, and suddenly he was in her space, close enough to touch. "Tonight, watching you with my family, hearing you tell that story about your third day at the office, I realized I've been wasting almost a year." "Wasting?" "You've been right there, every day, making me laugh, keeping me sane, treating me like a person instead of a CEO. And I was so focused on professional boundaries that I didn't see, Jayden." Her voice came out breathless. "This is supposed to be fake." "I know." His hand came up to cup her jaw, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Tell me to stop, and I will." She should tell him to stop. This was a business arrangement. This was $50,000 and a weekend of pretending. But his eyes were so dark and his hand was so warm, and she'd spent 11 months telling herself not to notice him. "Don't stop," she whispered. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was 11 months of suppressed tension, finally breaking free, all heat and desperation, and the kind of chemistry that couldn't be manufactured. Natalie grabbed the front of his shirt to steady herself, and he wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her closer, and somewhere in the back of her mind, she registered that this was definitely not in the contract. Well, well, well. They sprung apart like teenagers caught by parents. Mina stood in the doorway, arms crossed, grin spreading across her face like the Cheshire Cat. "Don't mind me," she said, not even trying to hide her delight. "I just came down for a glass of water. Please, continue. Pretend I'm not here." "Mina," Jayden started. "You know, for a fake relationship, there sure is a lot of real kissing happening." Natalie's heart stopped. How did you? Please. I'm a psychology major. I study human behavior for a living. Mina pushed off from the doorframe, sauntering into the kitchen. Also, you two were terrible at hiding it. The way you kept looking at each other during dinner, the rehearsed answers, the fact that my brother suddenly has a personality. I always had a personality. No, you had an Excel spreadsheet where a personality should be. This, she gestured between them, this is new, this is real, so either you're both incredible actors or something changed between the planning and the execution. Natalie and Jayden exchanged glances. We were planning to tell everyone on Monday, Jayden started. Don't, Mina held up a hand. Don't ruin this for grandmother. She's so happy she actually smiled at breakfast this morning. Genuine smile. Not her, I'm politely tolerating your existence smile. If you tell her it was fake, it'll break her heart. So what do you suggest? I suggest you figure out what you actually want. Mina's expression softened. Because that kiss I just witnessed, that wasn't fake. And if you throw that away because you're both too scared to admit it, you're idiots. She grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, saluted them with it, and walked away. Silence. Your sister, Natalie finally said, is terrifying. She has a gift. Jayden ran a hand through his hair, looking more rattled than she'd ever seen him. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. That kiss was amazing. He looked at her, surprised. It was amazing, Natalie repeated, and terrifying, and definitely not what I signed up for when I agreed to this. She took a deep breath. But I don't regret it. You don't? No. She stepped closer to him, close enough to see the hope flickering in his eyes. I've spent almost a year convincing myself that you were my boss and nothing more, that the way I noticed you was unprofessional, that the way you made me feel was inappropriate. She reached up, smoothing down a piece of his hair that had gotten mussed. But maybe Mina's right. Maybe something changed. What changed? I saw you, the real you, the one who cries at puppy commercials and ate cold pizza at 2 a.m. and played Darth Vader at a children's recital. She smiled. The warm bread underneath the cold exterior. Are you going to make warm bread jokes forever? Almost certainly. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine, and pulled her back into his arms. We should probably go to bed, he murmured against her hair. Separately, because if I kiss you again, I'm not going to be able to stop. That's very responsible of you. I'm trying to be a gentleman. It's annoying. Noted. He kissed her forehead, soft and sweet. Tomorrow we'll figure this out. What it means, what happens next. But tonight, just know that this isn't fake for me anymore. Maybe it never was. Natalie nodded, her heart so full it hurt. Good night, Jayden. Good night, Natalie. Natalie woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of something delicious cooking downstairs. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memories came flooding back. The kiss, the confession, Mina's knowing smile, and she buried her face in her pillow and screamed silently. What had she done? She'd kissed her boss. She'd caught feelings for her boss. She'd let a fake relationship become real in the span of 24 hours. This was either the best decision of her life or the worst mistake she'd ever made. There was no middle ground. A knock on her door interrupted her spiral. Natalie, breakfast is in 20 minutes. It was Jayden's voice, warm and slightly hesitant, and just hearing it made her stomach flip. I'll be down soon, she called back, then immediately dove into the bathroom to make herself presentable. 20 minutes later, she descended the stairs in white linen pants and a soft blue blouse, her hair still in its neat low bun, because she didn't have time for anything else. The dining room was already full, Mr. and Mrs. Lee, grandmother, Mina, and Jayden, who looked up when she entered with an expression that made her want to kiss him again. She sat down in the empty chair beside him, acutely aware of every eye on them. You look rested, Mrs. Lee said pleasantly. The mattress was incredible, Natalie replied, reaching for the coffee pot. I've never slept better. They're from a specialty manufacturer in Japan. I could give you their contact information. Margaret, Grandmother Lee interrupted. Stop talking about mattresses. I want to hear about the wedding. Coffee went down the wrong pipe. Natalie choked, coughing violently, while Jayden thumped her back with barely concealed panic. The wedding? Mrs. Lee looked confused. What wedding? Theirs. Grandmother Lee gestured between Natalie and Jayden with her chopsticks. They are getting married, yes? That is why he brought her home? Grandmother, we haven't. Don't be old-fashioned, Jayden. Couples live together for years now. Marriage can come later. She fixed her sharp gaze on Natalie. Unless you don't want to marry my grandson. He is handsome, rich, warm-bred inside. What is the problem? There's no problem. Then we plan wedding. Grandmother Lee nodded decisively. Next spring. Cherry blossoms in Seoul. Your family will fly in, yes? I will pay for everything. Mother, Mr. Lee said, speaking for the first time, perhaps we should let the young people decide their own timeline. Timeline? She is 26. He is 30. What timeline? They are already late. Late? Natalie couldn't help asking. I had 3 children by 30. Margaret had Jayden at 28. You are behind schedule. The schedule isn't really. I am making you a schedule. Grandmother Lee pulled out her phone, an iPhone with rhinestones on the case, and started typing. Engagement announcement, 1 month. Ring shopping, 2 weeks. Engagement party, another month. Wedding planning, 6 months. Wedding, next April. Honeymoon, immediately after. First grandchild, 9 months later. Second grandchild. Grandmother, Jayden interrupted, his face a fascinating shade of red. Maybe we should. You have input? Good. What month is better for babies? I will consult the zodiac. Mina was laughing so hard she dropped her fork. Mrs. Lee had her head in her hands. Mr. Lee looked like he was actively trying to disappear. And Natalie looked at the chaos around her, at the family that had taken her in like she belonged, at the man beside her who was simultaneously mortified and fond. May, she said. Everyone stopped. May is good for babies, Natalie continued, her heart pounding. Spring birthdays mean outdoor parties, good weather, flowers blooming. She turned to Jayden, finding his eyes. And cherry blossoms in Seoul do sound beautiful. Jayden stared at her. You can't actually be agreeing to... I'm not agreeing to a schedule. She reached over and took his hand. I'm agreeing to the possibility. The someday, maybe. The idea that this could become something real. She squeezed his fingers. If you want that too. The dining room had gone silent. Grandmother Lee was watching them with sharp, satisfied eyes. Mrs. Lee had stopped hiding behind her hands. Mina had finally stopped laughing and was watching her brother with an expression approaching tenderness. Jayden looked at their joined hands, then back at her face. You're serious, he said quietly. I'm serious. This is insane. This started as... I know what it started as. She smiled. I'm more interested in what it could become. The rest of Saturday passed in a blur of family activities, a tour of the gardens, a cooking lesson with Mrs. Lee, an intense game of Monopoly that nearly ended in bloodshed when Mina accused Jayden of cheating. He bought Park Place without telling anyone. I announced it. You weren't listening. You whispered. I have a naturally quiet voice. You have a naturally deceitful voice. Through it all, Natalie felt like she was floating outside herself, watching a different woman navigate this strange new world. A woman who held Jayden's hand without thinking, who laughed at Grandmother Lee's pointed comments, who fit into this family like she'd always belonged there. That evening, after dinner, Jayden pulled her out onto the balcony, overlooking the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold, and Natalie thought, not for the first time, that this weekend felt like a dream she was terrified of waking from. I need to tell you something, Jayden said, leaning against the railing. That sounds ominous. It's not. I hope it's not. He turned to face her. When I asked you to do this, I told you it was a business arrangement. $50,000 to pretend for a weekend. I remember, but that wasn't entirely true. He paused, searching for words. I asked you because you were the only person I could imagine doing this with, the only person who made the idea bearable. Natalie's heart stuttered. I've watched you for almost a year, he continued. The way you handle everything with grace and humor. The way you aren't afraid of me. The way you make me feel like a person instead of a job title. He took a breath. I told myself it was professional admiration, but it wasn't. It's never been professional. Jayden, I know the timing is terrible. I know this started as a lie. But I don't want it to end as one. He reached out, taking her hand. I want to tell my family the truth, that we started as fake but became real, that I'm in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, fragile and precious. You're in love with me, Natalie repeated. I know it's sudden. It's not sudden. She stepped closer, reaching up to touch his face. I've been falling for you for months. I just convinced myself it was inappropriate. We work together. We do. This could complicate everything. It could. The office gossip alone will be spectacular. He laughed, the sound breaking the tension. You're not worried? I'm terrified, she admitted. But I'm also happy, genuinely, deliriously happy, and I think that's worth any amount of complication. Jayden pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. I'll hire you a new boss, he murmured against her hair. Someone good. Someone who deserves you. Or, Natalie said, you could just not be terrible about the power dynamic, and we'll figure it out as we go. That's the healthy option. I'm a healthy person. You ate 3 servings of dessert yesterday. That was Korean rice cake. It doesn't count. That's not how calories work. She kissed him to shut him up, and he laughed against her mouth, and somewhere in the distance they could hear Grandmother Lee saying, finally, loud enough to echo across the estate. Sunday morning, Natalie and Jayden gathered his family in the living room for what felt like a press conference about their relationship. We have something to tell you, Jayden started. You're engaged? Mrs. Lee asked hopefully. No. You're pregnant? Grandmother Lee demanded. No. You're moving to Seoul? Mina guessed. Why would we move to Seoul? Because grandmother would obviously pay for a house there if it meant more grandchildren. Nobody is having children right now, Jayden said loudly. The room fell silent. He took a breath, centering himself. What I need to tell you is that this relationship, Natalie and I, it didn't start the way you think. Mr. Lee's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? I asked Natalie to pretend to be my girlfriend this weekend. To avoid, he gestured vaguely at Grandmother Lee, the marriage pressure, the bride album, everything. Silence. Grandmother Lee's expression was unreadable. Mrs. Lee looked hurt. Mr. Lee looked disappointed. Mina looked smug, which was somehow the worst reaction. I told you, Mina said to no one in particular. You knew, Mrs. Lee demanded. I figured it out. I'm a psychology major. That doesn't give you superpowers. Actually, it gives me pattern recognition skills that... Enough, Grandmother Lee commanded. Everyone stopped talking. The old woman rose from her seat, walking slowly toward Natalie and Jayden with measured steps. Her face was impossible to read. You lied to me, she said to Jayden. Yes, Grandmother. You brought a fake girlfriend to avoid your responsibilities. Yes, Grandmother. You treated your family like obstacles to be managed instead of people who love you. Jayden looked down. Yes, Grandmother. Grandmother Lee stood before him for a long moment, her expression inscrutable. Then she turned to Natalie. And you took money to participate in this deception. Natalie refused to look away. I agreed to help him, yes. For compensation. $50,000, I assume? That's my grandson's favorite number. For expensive but not outrageous. That's actually correct. Grandmother Lee nodded slowly. Then suddenly she smiled. Good. Everyone blinked. Good? Jayden asked weakly. Good? Grandmother Lee returned to her seat, settling in with obvious satisfaction. You think I didn't know? An old woman who has been watching people for 83 years? Please. You knew, Natalie said flatly. From the moment you walked in, the rehearsed answers, the way my grandson kept looking at you for confirmation, the fact that he was touching you, Jayden doesn't touch anyone. She shrugged elegantly. But I also saw what happened after. The way the pretending became real. The way you looked at each other during dinner. The way my grandson laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in years. So you just played along. I encouraged what was happening organically. Grandmother Lee's eyes sparkled. Sometimes love needs a push. You provided the opportunity, I provided the pressure, and now, she gestured between them, now you have something real. That's manipulative, Jayden said. Strategic. There's a difference. Grandmother Lee turned to Natalie. I believe I taught you this, granddaughter. Granddaughter. Natalie's throat tightened. I'm not. You will be. Eventually. When my grandson finally finds the courage to propose. She shot Jayden a pointed look, which should be within 6 months. I've already picked the venue. Grandmother, Seoul, cherry blossoms. It's what you want. Don't argue with an old woman who might die any day. You've been saying that for 15 years. And eventually I'll be right. By Sunday afternoon, it was time to leave. Natalie stood in the circular driveway, saying goodbyes that felt too big for the short time she'd known these people. Mrs. Lee hugged her tight. You come back, every holiday, every birthday. No excuses. I'll do my best, Mrs. Lee. Margaret, you call me Margaret now. Mr. Lee shook her hand formally, then surprised her by pulling her into a brief, awkward hug. Take care of my son, he murmured. He needs someone like you. Mina bounded over, phone in hand. I'm following you on everything. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Do people your age use TikTok? I'm 26, not ancient. We're starting a group chat. Just us. I'll send you all the embarrassing Jayden stories that didn't make it to dinner. I can hear you. Good. Be better. Mina hugged Natalie enthusiastically. Welcome to the family, sister. And then there was Grandmother Lee. The old woman stood before Natalie, reaching up to cup her face with surprisingly soft hands. You will come to Seoul, she said. It wasn't a question. You will see where my family is from. You will eat real Korean food, not the Americanized version. You will meet my sisters. They will judge you, but don't worry. I already approve, so their opinion doesn't matter. Natalie laughed, tears pricking her eyes. I would love that, grandmother. Good. Grandmother Lee patted her cheek. Now take my warm bread, grandson, and make him happy. That's all I ask. I'll try. Don't try. Do. There's a difference. In the car, driving away from the estate, Natalie let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for 3 days. So, Jayden said, glancing at her, that happened. That happened, she agreed. My grandmother wants us married within a year. I noticed. My family loves you more than they love me. Can you blame them? I'm delightful. He laughed, reaching over to take her hand. What now? He asked. Natalie thought about it, about returning to work tomorrow, where everything would be different and the same, about navigating a relationship with her boss, about the future stretching ahead, full of possibility and chaos and love. Now, she said, we see what happens when the pretending stops and the real thing begins. That sounds terrifying. It is. You're still smiling. I know. She squeezed his hand. Terrifying can be good. Terrifying means something matters. Jayden brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. You matter, he said quietly, more than I ever expected, more than I probably deserve. You deserve good things, Jayden Lee. It's about time you started believing that. He didn't argue. He just held her hand, watching the road ahead, and smiled like a man who'd finally found something worth keeping. 5 months later, the cherry blossoms in Seoul were exactly as beautiful as Grandmother Lee had promised. Natalie stood on a traditional wooden bridge in a palace garden, wearing a soft pink hanbok that Mrs. Lee, Margaret, had insisted on buying for her. The silk was cool against her skin, the wind carrying the scent of spring flowers, and something cooking nearby that made her stomach growl. You look like a painting, Jayden said, appearing beside her with 2 cups of tea. You look like you're about to pass out from anxiety. Your observational skills remain excellent. She took the tea, warming her hands against the ceramic. Your grandmother already told me you're proposing today. She accidentally forwarded me the family group chat where she was coordinating the photographer. Jayden closed his eyes. Of course she did. It's fine. I would have figured it out anyway. You're wearing a suit, in a garden, on a Wednesday. Maybe I just wanted to look nice. You packed a ring box that you keep checking every 5 minutes. It's in your left jacket pocket. You've touched it approximately 17 times since we got here. He stared at her. Are you sure you're not the one with pattern recognition superpowers? I've been your assistant for almost 2 years. I know your tells. Jayden set down his tea, reaching into his pocket, finally, openly, and pulling out a small velvet box. Well then, he said, since you already know, I might as well do this properly. He got down on one knee, right there on the bridge, with tourists taking photos in the background, and Grandmother Lee probably watching from behind a tree somewhere. Natalie Brown, he said, you came into my life as a business arrangement and became the best decision I ever made. You make me laugh. You keep me humble. You call me warm bread and I can't even be mad about it because it's accurate. She laughed, tears already streaming down her face. I don't deserve you, he continued, but I'm selfish enough to ask anyway. Will you marry me? Natalie looked at him, this man who'd been cold and closed off and so afraid of being hurt that he'd built walls around his heart. This man who'd let her in despite himself, who'd chosen vulnerability over protection, who'd become warm bread right before her eyes. Yes, she said. Obviously yes. I didn't fly to Seoul and put on this humbug to say no. He slid the ring onto her finger, a simple, elegant diamond that caught the light like captured stars, and pulled her into a kiss that made the watching tourists applaud. When they finally broke apart, breathing hard, Natalie spotted Grandmother Lee emerging from behind a strategically placed cherry tree, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, while simultaneously directing the photographer. Finally, the old woman shouted, now we plan the wedding. I have a schedule. Jayden groaned. Grandmother, we literally just got engaged. That was 6 months ago. You are behind. Natalie laughed, leaning into her fiancé's arms, surrounded by cherry blossoms and chaos, and a family that had claimed her as their own from the very first dinner. Welcome to the Lees, Jayden murmured against her hair. There's no escape now. I don't want to escape. You say that now. Wait until she starts planning the baby schedule. She already sent me a draft, color-coded, with optimal conception dates based on the lunar calendar. Jayden's expression was equal parts horror and affection. I love you. I love you too, warm bread. We're never going to stop with that, are we? Absolutely not. He kissed her again, and somewhere nearby, Grandmother Lee started shouting about guest lists and seating arrangements and grandchildren. It was perfect. It was chaotic. It was exactly where Natalie was meant to be. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you never miss when we post new stories. Drop a comment below telling me what was your favorite moment from this story. See you in the next video.